Hello everyone and good morning. We're in week 6 and we're going to start some review on the EOC. Make sure you're working on Carnegie because that will get you ready for that test. Let's take a look here. It says parallel and perpendicular, so I want you to take a minute or so and compare your answers for parallel and perpendicular with your neighbor. And then I want a line perpendicular to this line through that point, and then special triangles. So take a minute and do that. All right, let's take a look here. Remember, parallel uses the same slope. For number 1, little a, it would be parallel, perpendicular. Okay, so parallel would be 3. Perpendicular, you would have to write it as a fraction, which is 3 over 1, and then flip and change. So flip, FC, flip change. So it would have to be a negative 1/3. Make sure you know that, okay? And then the next one, B, parallel would be the same thing. Perpendicular would be a positive 5 over 2. This one, excuse me, C, you have to change it. So that's 15 plus 1 is 16 over 5. Rise over run. And then this one would be a negative 5 over 16. Make sure you understand how to do that. All right, let's move on. This one says, write one perpendicular. Well, perpendicular, you're going to take the slope, which is right here in front of the x. You're going to flip it and change it. So it's going to be y minus your y. In this case, my y is a negative 4, is equal to my slope. In perpendicular, you got to flip it and change it. So that should be 3 over 2. And then x minus your x, which is a negative 2. So it's going to be y plus 4 is equal to a negative 3 over 2x plus 2. And then you could distribute. This is called point slope, but let's get it in slope-intercept form. So you're going to distribute and you're going to subtract 4. So you're going to get negative 3 over 2x. Put a 1 under here, and I tried to teach this to you. This is a negative times a positive. That's 1 negative, so that's going to be a negative 6. 2 times 1 is 2, and then you have to subtract that 4, so put a minus 4 over 1. You want to go ahead and find your least common denominator here, okay? We talked about that. Your least common denominator is 2, so you want to have a negative 6 over 2 minus 8 over 2, which gives you a negative 14 over 2. So your answer on the EOC would be negative 3 over 2x, and then minus 14 over 2. And I'm going to start putting some of these review questions on your test. So make sure you understand that. All right, you can go home and watch this a million times and learn it. The next one is a special triangle. You could technically use trig on this, and we're going to go over trig again today. So put your circles. This one is a 30, 60, 90, so that's 1, 2, square root of 3. And remember, 2 goes across from the 90, so put a 2, and the 1 goes across from there. So this one's going to be the square root of 3, and we're not even looking for this one. So it's going to be circles on top. So 2 over 7 equals 1 over x. So 2x is equal to 7, and then divide by 2. So this was a pretty easy problem. So 3.5, 7 divided by 2. Is 3.5. Let's talk about today's work. All right, there's a few things you can do here, and let's take a look at number 10. Okay, so we're going to focus in, and I'm going to make number 10 bigger. Okay, so copy number 10 and pay attention to this. There's 2 ways to do this. Okay, well, this one right here, if they give you the angle, you just use Sohcahtoa. Write that down. Sohcahtoa. Those are your trig functions, okay? So if you're standing here, you got to label your sides. So put a dot, and I want to see that dot. So this would be opposite. This would be your hypotenuse, and this one would be adjacent. Remember, the 2 that touch the dot is the hypotenuse and the adjacent. You're looking for x, so circle this, and you know this one, which is 13. So this has an A, this one has an O. So which one has an A and an O, an A and an O? It'd be tangent. So you want to write, and let me minimize this a little bit so I don't run out of workroom. So you want to write your formula, and your formula is going to be the tangent of 32 degrees is equal to, now the O comes first, so the O goes on top. So it's opposite, which is x, over adjacent, which is 13. So here you're dividing by 13, so all you do is multiply both sides by 13. I would put the 13 in the front. We talked about this a lot. So clear your calculator. In fact, make sure your calculators are out. So press 32 tan and then times 13. So the answer here should be 8.1. Make sure you know how to do that. All right, that's the first type. The second type is like number 1. So copy down number 1. Draw the diagram. This is called the inverse function. Okay, this is where you're looking for the angle. So here they say theta, and you can put an x right here. So just put an x. You can change that little Greek letter to an x. Okay, so write this down. When you look for an angle, when you look for the angle, you do the inverse. And I'm going to teach that to you right now. It's basically the same thing, but it's a little bit different. So watch carefully. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is set up your trig function. So this is where you're standing by theta, so put a dot. This is opposite. Label your sides. This is the hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent. Make sure you can label your sides correctly, okay? Once you label your sides correctly, you look at what they give you. They give you the A, and they give you the H. So you're going to write down Sohcahtoa, and the more you write it, the more you're going to remember it, okay? So A and H is right here, that's cosine. So put the cosine of angle X is equal to, and the A goes on top, so the A is 12. So put 12 over 13, okay? Now here's the trick. Draw a line, circle the X, you're going to divide by the word cosine. When you divide by the word cosine, it becomes the inverse. So put angle X is equal to the inverse, and we abbreviate the inverse with a -1. Okay, so whenever you look for an angle, it's going to be the inverse function. And here's how you do it. Clear it out. Press 12 divided by 13. Press equals. Okay, and then you hit shift. You have to hit the shift key here, right here. Hit the shift key and then press cosine. That's going to give you the inverse, which is way down here, that orange one. So it's going to be 22.6 degrees. And that's how you do the inverse function. We're going to do one more to make sure you can do it, okay? So copy down number 7. Copy down number 7. All right? Label your sides. Well, put an X right here and then put a dot, okay? So label your sides. Well, if you're standing here, this would be your opposite. Across from the 90, or the box, would be your hypotenuse, and then this would be the adjacent. Okay, so they give you the hypotenuse and they give you the adjacent. So HA. What trig function has an H and an A in it, basically? So let's look back up here. An H and an A is still cosine. So put the cosine of angle X is equal to, and the A goes on top, so make sure. So it's 4.4 over 11. You're going to circle the X, you're going to divide by the cosine, and that's going to be the inverse cosine. Okay, so you have to hit the shift key. That's the only difference. Okay, so clear it out. Press 4.4 divided by 11. Press equals, and then hit shift, and then press cosine. This is a 66.4 degree angle. That's how you do the top part of today's worksheet. Now I'm going to go a little smaller here. If you can't be with us, I'm going to show you the worksheet. Okay, so here it is. This is worksheet A. All right, and I want you to work the whole thing. On this back part right here, they want you to find everything. They want you to find the missing angle. They want you to find both sides. Again, to find the missing angle and find both sides. Okay, so it's a little bit of work there. Have a good morning.